Hi everyone, this is Shelby with Quest, and thank you for joining us for the ERP Cloud SIG meeting. We have Dick and Adam from CTR Inc. here with us today to discuss implementation methodology. I've got just a few housekeeping notes to go over before we get started. All attendee lines are in mute and will stay in mute throughout the presentation. So if you do have any questions, please put those in the questions drop-down box on your GoToWebinar panel, and we'll answer those at the end of the session. This session is being recorded and will be uploaded to the Quest content library shortly after today's presentation. So at this time, I'll pass things over to Dick and Adam to get things started.
Okay, thank you, Shelby. We appreciate it. Thank you for attending on a Monday morning. I know you have a lot of things to do, so we'll try to keep it short and simple and to the point. This is a presentation on our implementation methodology, and we're going to cover this agenda. We'll talk very briefly about ourselves, about CTR, and then we'll get right into our methodology. What I wanted to do is save time for the tips and tricks at the end, as well as to answer questions that you might have. Okay. So this is us. My name is Dick Kenny. I'm a VP over here at CTR, and I have about 20 years of experience, specifically in ERP. I am a California CPA and was a controller. So we actually implemented Oracle EBS way back when in the early days. We focus on best practices here, and I'll give you over to Adam. Adam?
Yeah, thanks, Dick. Hi, Adam Cohen here. I've been in the Oracle technology sales ecosystem for almost 10 years now. Gone through a ton of different deal cycles with different customers, different clients. So I definitely know where a lot of you are coming from when you're thinking about maybe moving to the cloud, what it would take, what those efforts are. And so we're certainly happy to be having that conversation with you here today. As part of that conversation, one thing that we, like to find out is what current ERP system you're using right now. So we're going to take a brief poll on that. If you can trigger that, Shelby, that'd be great. And then we'll get into the main content. We'll leave this open for 30 seconds or so, and then we'll go through that. You'll hear my voice throughout the conversation today as I will pepper Dick with some questions as we move through this. Please feel free to answer your own or put up your own questions, and I'll get them answered toward the end, or if they make sense during the conversation, we'll definitely plug them in. Thank you so much. Happy everybody was able to make it today.
Okie dokie. So that's us. The next slide, it certainly is a busy slide, but I wanted to make it as simple yet not to go through multiple slides about CTR. Computer Technology Resources is its actual name. But we're
Dick, I think we still have the poll up.
Sorry.
But it's closing now. There we go.
Okay. Sorry about that. This is CTR. We are a global organization. We have resources both in the United States, Canada, and in India. We are Oracle Cloud Excellence Certified, which just is another badge that we wear. We had to jump through some hoops to get to that certification, and it just says that Oracle is happy with how we've implemented the cloud in the past. This is a splash page of some of our clients. Everybody has them, but I just, I like to put in ones that cover the full spectrum from financial services to distribution to retail, so this kind of reflects our organization. We are an Oracle shop. We've been an Oracle shop for our entire existence, which is a little over 20 years now. But we do Oracle ERP Cloud and EBS and NetSuite, and we do managed services for some of those applications. And that's about us. I didn't want to take a lot of time up, but just wanted to give you an idea of us. Okay, I like this slide. It's scary because it talks about why implementations fail, but I highlighted just 3 points in here that usually it's a lack of coordination and detailed planning. Sometimes it's a lack of discipline, And other times it's just that we don't have a clear understanding of what success means. And
Yeah,
so,
Dick,
yeah,
that's actually a really good point, and a question that comes up a lot in my conversations is, when we talk about success and failure, what is failure? Like, how would you define that? Because I know that different companies and different clients see it differently. Can you talk a little bit about that?
sure. For those who are attending, you certainly know when it's failed. I mean, sometimes it's obvious that you are unable to implement the product, but other times it's less obvious. It could be that it didn't meet the client's needs or the user's needs. So you put up this beautiful new system, and the first thing you hear from the users, well, I don't do that. It doesn't reflect my day-to-day work, or that isn't what the customer's looking for. The customer's looking for this. So it's important, and that's kind of why we've developed our implementation methodology that we'll cover later. But it's important. One of the first steps we need in our requirement gathering is, what do you consider a successful implementation? What are you driving this for? Are you implementing Oracle ERP to get this or that out of it? It could be nothing. It could be something as important as meeting customers' needs through iReceivables or one of those, or it could be any
Right.
number of things. Mhm.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
Okay. So I like that little icon at the over to the right that says learning from failure, because that is how our implementation methodology was developed over the years. But we looked at two research surveys that came up and said, this one was from Software Advice Inc. that talked about 50% of ERP implementations fail, and another one by Predictive Analytics Today that talked about 30% of the projects perceived to have failed. And I think that that's the important word in this: perceived to have failed. You may have very successfully implemented Oracle. It may have, and I'm focusing on Oracle, obviously, just because of the SIG that we're in, but um, but it determines what you have to get to is what you consider to be a failure, and that usually involves that you didn't plan for something along the process. Um, and then 10% of the projects failed, usually because of technology. But you always hear that my implementation failed because of Oracle, my implementation failed because of SAP. It's oft times deeper than that. But I just wanted to focus on the negative just to begin with, just because I think that it's important as we talk about our implementation methodology, why we derived one. Okay. The CTR's methodology, it's come from an amalgam of Oracle's AIM and UOM process. And those of you who have been using Oracle for a long time, you're probably familiar with these methodologies. Certainly, they probably didn't even start at Oracle. They probably started from another implementation methodology, but they're great. They're universal, and they've been around forever. We've taken these as well as our own life experiences, having been in the business for over 20 years, and developed our own methodology based on these. And what we find is the key features to our methodology is that it's controllable, it's flexible, and it's scalable. When I talk about controllable, what I'm really talking about, you always hear the phrase, eating the elephant bite by bite. We break it down to milestones, and we break those milestones down to tasks, and we break those tasks down to deliverable, so that we are able to monitor the progress, so that at the end of a month or 2 months or 3 months, we're not surprised because we've missed certain aspects. It's flexible because every organization is unique. Every point of success is unique. And so what we did was make this flexible enough to handle that process. You might be implementing a single application. You might be implementing an entire ERP. You might be implementing just a module within the application. So we feel that this methodology, and as we go into it in more detail, we'll certainly cover some of that. And it's scalable, whether you're putting it in at US only, or a single manufacturing site, or you're putting it in a worldwide process. We feel that our methodology can be applied Certainly the extent changes and the number of people participating change, but the methodology really doesn't change. Okay. So when we talk about benefits, the benefits that can be derived from putting one in, obviously you can see a lot of them. This whole list, and this list will be shared. This whole PowerPoint will be shared. So I'm not going to cover every topic because we have an hour, and I'd like to get to the tips and hints and your questions because I think that those will produce more value. But one of the things I wanted to talk about is risk. You know, risk is really important to us, and when this is probably the single largest endeavor that your company will um, try to implement. And so certainly from an IT point, which a lot of times that's who we're interacting with, it's one of their biggest. It's their it's their go-to. It's everything for that year depends, or those years depend upon a successful implementation. So what we try to do is by looking at it being flexible and scalable and controllable, we try to reduce risk as much as possible.
Hey, Dick.
Yeah.
That's a really good point on reducing risk, and a few of the slides. I think that one thing that I hear a lot of people talk about is how to get to this place right here. Is that really starting at like the requirements gathering phase for a lot of clients?
Yeah, I mean, it is, that's certainly along the path, and we do have some slides coming up, but actually it even starts with an internal conversation within the organization as to what they want to do. And then after you've gone with that, it's talking to software providers that can do this. And then it's talking to partners that you might be partnering with that will help you implement. So it's a long process, but all those times, yeah, you should have in mind what your business requirements are. And that's why when we get into more of the detail of our methodology, you'll see that the requirements part is the first for us, because at that point we've already assumed, you've already decided on the software, you've already decided on your implementation partner. And so yes, I feel that the biggest part of the beginning of the process is looking at your business requirements. Yes. Okay. And so we're going to get into a more colorful slide next after this, but I just wanted to focus on these. This is what I consider to be our 4 phases, or if you were an implementer, we might call them a milestone. But obviously the first parts is the design and discovery. This is what Adam was talking about as far as determining what your requirements are, both at a high level and then as we drill down into more detail. The more information I can get at this point, the better I will be able to design the implementation methodology. So, and then once I do that, and once I mean, it's an iterative process. It's not like I say, okay, these are my requirements, and then I build it, and I don't get any more feedback from the users. So it is iterative. But once I've developed those business requirements, then it's important for me to build it within the system, and then having built it meaning typically our like working with your subject matter experts. We would go back and forth and actually start configuring and building the application. If it's ERP Cloud, we're actually setting up your chart of account and your ledgers and your business units. But so that's kind of what we're doing, and we're configuring it so we can very quickly understand what you want and what the system can provide standard. So it's really important that process go back and forth so that we make sure that we maximize your requirements. We understand your requirements and we implement your requirements. It can go back and forth quite a bit, but after that, then in my opinion, the most important part of the process happens. It's the testing process. Now, the testing is done over a number of times. You've all heard of system integration testing and conference room piloting and user acceptance testing. That doesn't change, but those are there because we want to make sure that at every point that we're going along the right path. And this is an important part of any implementer's methodology. And so once we've done that, we transition. Transition just means it's a process going from either one test instance to another, or from the test instance in. We have a cutover plan, and we're starting to build the production instance. Not actually pulled out here, because I'll be talking about it at another point, is the training process. And one of the slides I have later will talk about when we think is the optimum time for training. Again, because this system is flexible, it really reflects what you want it to do, but we will give our advice, and we will build that test plan with you so that you're happy at the end. And the last, and we hope, we hope is successful, is to deploy that application or that ERP system into production, so that it's using, you go live, you're happy. And then the support side, that's really important to us, because we do a lot of managed services. So it doesn't end when you click prod. It never ends, because the support side should be talking about what happens after I do all my priority 1 requirements. Then I'll have priority 2 requirements. Meanwhile, the users are starting to use the system, so new priorities are being put in that listing. So it's important that you see that as a constant cycle, the support side. So we're always monitoring, we're always addressing the system, we're always building in that regard.
Yeah, this is great, Dick. Over the top of all this, can you speak a little bit? This is a wonderful, very prescriptive way of, going through an implementation, making sure that we're going through the right phases, that they're iterative. Where does change management fit into all this?
Coincidentally, that's my next slide. Change management, I'll start on that. I'll actually show the next slide. So change management, this is more colorful. I'm actually going to open up all the transitions, but these are the 4 steps I was talking about, of the 4 processes. And you can see the change management is actually the entire spectrum. It really should be involved in everything, because it's not just, you're not just changing the application, you're changing how you react to the application. Because if you're going from, say, EBS to ERP Cloud, a lot of things are similar. Or if you're going from JD Edwards to ERP Cloud or PeopleSoft, a lot of things are similar, but some things are different. And so what you want to do, you've all heard how the cloud may not be as flexible as your on-premise. That's true, and it's not true, by the way. But yes, it's important that you keep in mind, as you progress through the process, the methodology, that where does that change have to happen? And that's why when I talk about this methodology, it's broken down into smaller steps. So at each point, like in this representation, at each point there's a review, approve, and sign off. And that's just not that's not to just cover ourselves, but it's to make sure that you're happy with the outcome. And if you're not happy with the outcome, we go back and we think about this and see if Oracle can be configured, or if maybe you need to change your internal process to reflect some of the things that Oracle has changed. So it's the change management is probably one of the more important parts of going live, because again, you'll still consider it a failure at the end, even if we go live and it doesn't reflect your business, or you don't know how to use it, or it doesn't do what you want it to do. So that change management is important to us.
Right. Thanks for answering that question. It sounds like the review, approve, and sign off phase also helps on the risk that you were talking about earlier, kind of cutting.
Yeah,
cutting that
I think
down
it
on?
does, because you can see that it happens really early on in the process. You know, the
Right.
review, approve, and assign, and each one of those steps, we take it very seriously, as would any implementer. Take it very seriously, because that's kind of your ultimate feedback, saying yes we've seen the system, yes we've approved the requirements, yes we mentioned the develop solution design, develop project plans. It's important that you look at those things and say, yes, this reflects what I wanted to do. If not, I mean, it's been as simple as, we plan on going live during one of your plant shutdowns. So that that might be good, it might not be good. So it's important that you look through all of our deliverables and come up with, yes, this will work for us. And so
Right.
yeah, that's really important to us. And so this is just a more graphic way of saying, these are the steps. This is what we typically provide at these points. Remembering that, again, it's flexible. So if we need to change anything, we can change it. But we want it to progress. Okay.
Perfect.
So the project processes, I'm not going to really cover much of these. We've already talked about a number of these, the configuration. Very important for me is the gap design, where we look at the existing functionality within Oracle's offerings. We look at that compared to your requirements, and we try to merge those as much as possible. We try to be very successful in how we can do that, and that's where 20 years of experience in working with Oracle helps, because no, not every shoe fits every foot. But if we know your requirements and we know Oracle's capability, we can make a lot of those shoes fit, or we can find other shoes that fit better. So that's kind of important to us. So these are the project processes. There's a couple of slides for those. And so again, right up here, testing, training. You can see that I definitely have a sway. I really feel testing is probably one of the most important parts of the process. Second only to training. If we do this correctly, if we do this implementation methodology correctly, my goal, or our goal, CTR's goal at the end, is that your users will just transition to production, and because they've been trained adequately, and because they've been testing the process, they will know it'll be really anticlimactic. That's my goal. That's our goal at every client we have, is that the consultant is sitting there on day 4 of go live, and there's no questions. There of course are questions, but they're being answered by your subject matter experts or your leaders within the different pods. And so it's that, to me, when I see an idle resource, a consultant available, that to me is a true sign of success. We keep on pinging to make sure our phones are working and all that at that point. So that's the process. And then at the end, the operational support, where we look and see, have we answered their questions? Are the users coming up with performance issues? Are the users coming up with things that a second and third phase that they want to be, that they need to be implemented, because maybe there were some reports missing, maybe there were other things that haven't done. That last part is so important as well to measure success. Okay.
Yeah, that's great. This might be a good place to, actually put up another one of our poll questions about, who's thinking about upgrading to the cloud or upgrading their version of on-premise. If we can put that up. But while that is up, Dick, really quickly, we've kind of touched upon this, I think, the whole time without really saying anything about it. But when is the best time for a client to engage a partner through this process? Is it after they've kind of gone through their entire selection process, or is it really early on? When would you really, sort of counsel clients to start engaging partners, not just potentially the software vendor, but for implementation assistance?
As I've mentioned, we're primarily an Oracle shop, so typically when you're looking at other options, outside of Oracle, sometimes it's helpful to work I mean, certainly Oracle is involved. Oracle sales would be involved. That's important. But it's also important that maybe you have somebody that's kind of as a liaison between yourselves and the implementer. So I would, I mean, if it were up to me, I would recommend that we're involved as early as possible, because during that process, then we can give you some insight into certainly into CTR, but also into Oracle, things that it does best, things that it has difficulty doing, things that you might have to have a third party work with, so that you get a clearer picture of the overall. We typically partner with Oracle, and so if Oracle is one of a few companies that you're looking at, we typically would partner with them. Although we also have been brought in after the decision to go with Oracle has happened, and so we've been involved in that. And unfortunately, sometimes we've been involved after a less than successful implementation. We've been involved to see if we can right the ship and bring it into reality. So it kind of the answer to all those things always is it depends. But if I have my choice, I would be involved as early as you can. Certainly those clients that we've had a long relationship with, maybe they were in EBS and they're thinking about going to the cloud, we get involved in that decision on whether they upgrade or whether they migrate to the cloud. We try to get involved during that early planning phase, even if it's maybe to move off of Oracle onto another product. We still want to help them in that transition, because that's how we do managed services.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It matches up with my experience as well. I've found that most of the clients that I work with that are the most successful in their choice and methodology usually engage a partner fairly early on in order to really gain that expertise and understanding that they might not have, because most clients aren't implementing software, ERP software, every year, thank goodness. And when they do that, it's great for them to kind of lean on professionals as early as possible. So that, and I've seen that be the most successful outcome as well. But anyway, thanks for that.
We're consultants, so of course we believe that. But
I mean, it does seem to help.
I think if you've gone through enough of these, you certainly understand that process. But yes, I truly believe that it is important to do that. The next slide is oftentimes I'm asked, when do I test? When do I train? When would I do gap analysis? When do I do this? And so we kind of looking at the 4 milestones that we mentioned earlier, and the tasks that I mentioned, which are actually defined in the prior slides. This kind of gives you an idea of when I would do what. And so, certainly project management, a key part of the whole process, is done from the beginning of the project all the way through to the end and beyond. Certainly the business requirements, I have it during the discovery and build, but it can be iterative, so we can go back and do those things. But as well as the requirements gathering, there's also the requirements analysis, and they kind of go hand in hand. And so you can see kind of throughout the process, training I have in multiple spots. That's because of my desire to have the users trained. Usually you're training the project team, and then you're training before testing, and then you're training before go live, and then you're training right after go live, because you can only absorb so much. And also, I mean, how much time does one have to go in and look at the testing systems? And the testing systems are changing while you're testing or training. So it's important to me that it's early and often. Then the transition, and obviously operation support. Those are key processes as you go along. I mean, whether you use our implementation methodology or whether you use somebody else's methodology, it really circles around the same thing. I mean, this isn't rocket science. We didn't create this. We just utilize it. Okay. And the next question that's always asked is, when do my people have to participate?
Exactly. I swear this whenever we've gone through presentations, most people tend to sit up on this one and like, okay, so this is what I need to do. this is the hours. But for our smaller customers, for customers that maybe don't have all these different individual project roles as a single person, can this be done by multiple people?
Oh, of course. I mean, oftentimes in smaller organizations, the same person that does the general ledger is also, maybe manager of accounts payable or accounts receivable, and they're also generating the financial reports. And so certainly they can be, and they may be process owners. I mean, so again, that's the flexibility side. I might be at a small division of a large organization, but I'm working with them to implement. Maybe the company already owns Oracle, so I'm implementing it at that division. So yeah, sure. I mean, they would be a smaller group that would do everything, but it is important when you look at this. There's a lot of red dots. I mean, and it's pretty constant, but the red dots imply that I need somebody, maybe not full time, but almost full time to answer my questions, because the more the users get involved in the process, the more buy-in they get. And this, we'll be talking about this in the tips and tricks coming up, but the more buy-in they get, the less complaining they get, the less scared they are. It's this involvement, that's why I'm focusing on it during this presentation, because this involvement really gets rid of a lot of concerns. Because I know you've all gone live in different applications. I mean, you're all using either JDE, PeopleSoft, or EBS, or the cloud. So you've already been involved in multiple applications. But the users, I'm from the accounting side. Accountants aren't the most are more change resistant than some. But that it's the resistance isn't because they don't want to, it's because they're concerned, they're scared of changing things. And so if you get your users involved early on in the process, you'll find a lot less resistance. In our case, we have it as in the testing. I mean, they're still lightly involved kind of through the process, but the testing and the deployment, it's much heavier, because we want them involved. The more involved, the better off you are. I mean, if to me, this one and the slide before that are kind of the two critical ones during our presentation, other than the one coming up, the tips and tricks. I know some of these seem really obvious to you, but you have to have a good sponsor, and the sponsor has to have the power to get things done, and to force some issues that need to get done as you go along the process. This isn't news to you. You've already, you experience it on a day-to-day basis on any projects you take on, not just an IT project or a user project. But frequent meetings, it's really important that you meet on a weekly, monthly basis, depending upon the size of the project. Certainly that has an impact on how often you meet. It certainly in the days of COVID, it's a little bit harder, but Zoom is available, or GoToMeeting, and so or GoToWebinar, and it does help to have that. But that constant feedback, that iterative process is what's going to lead to the overall, how I would define success, which is that it met the user's needs. The managing scope, you all know about scope creep. Something starts, and then you need to have this, and then you need to have this, and all of a sudden you're looking at third parties, bolt-ons and stuff. It's important that you meet those needs, but it's also important that you keep the project manageable. That you can easily, if you can push things off to a phase 2 because they don't impact you go live or the initial part of success, then you do that. Track issues and risks. We always keep an issue log, and those issue logs are kind of monitored throughout the whole process. That's one of the things that an internal project manager and an external project manager meet frequently to make sure. And some of those have to bubble up into Oracle and get resolved. So some of those are bigger issues, some of them are smaller issues. But it's important that you maintain those issues, because you might think you'll remember, but a lot of our projects get into 200, 300, 400 issues. So it's important that they're being tracked along the process. It doesn't mean that the software is bad or that the users don't understand. It's just clarification. And the more you have, and then you also have a history to go back to if you see the same issues rising frequently. Again, my big issues are testing and training. The more you do it, the more you do those two things, the better your go live will be. And so it's about it's a little under 10:40, and so to me that gives us time to answer questions, and I'd be glad to take questions at this point.
Sure. I think this is a good time to put up our last couple poll questions. You know, whether or not they're actively evaluating a cloud product such as ERP Cloud or other, and then you know a secondary question after that on you know following up with CTR, which we'd be happy to do. I did see in the question and answer, there's just really one question at the moment on posting this out. Shelby, when are we going to be posting this as a video? Does that usually get sent out to all the attendees?
Yeah, we'll be posting it within. Yeah, we'll be posting within the next 2 days, business days, and we'll be sending out a link to everybody once it's available.
Okay.
And then it looks like another question just came through the chat of how do you engage sponsors and process owners to ensure proper communication and expectations? They find this to be a huge factor in implementation success.
Yes. You know, I mean, it's always good to have that sponsor at as high of a level as you can get. Again, depending upon the size of the organization. Oftentimes, a C-level person, whether it be the CFO or the CAO, or if the focus is on more on the sales, it'd be VP of sales. If the focus is on manufacturing, it's usually the COO. The important thing is it's usually the person that when you're in a meeting and you're deciding to buy Oracle or deciding to go up to the cloud, it's usually 2 or 3 of the people in a group meeting, in a larger meeting, that are the most vocal. And so you know it's kind of bad, but you ask them to put their money where their mouth is. And if it's really important for you to have a software, it's really important for you to have a great manufacturing system, then I need you involved. And if you're the COO or a general manager, general managers are great for this too, because they do take lead roles. They've already volunteered to be a general manager, so it's logical that they would also do that. You just want somebody who also has a good understanding of what some of the issues are, or at least can listen to what the issues are, and that have that they're obviously available, and that they're willing to meet, and that they're willing to promote this across other disciplines. Because if you're the COO and you don't like the VP of sales, or you don't like the CFO, and you don't meet that often, then this won't do well. Because an ERP package requires all these systems to interact, and so finding that sponsor is usually coming from the accounting side. I mean, we've had great success in usually the CFO, because they understand the costs, they understand the lost costs of not having a successful implementation. So I tend to sway on that part, but I came from a manufacturing organization, and my COO and general manager were critical to the go live, because they're the ones that manage the bulk of the resources. So it really depends.
That makes sense. We have another
really great information. I'm sorry, didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, go ahead, Shelby.
I was going to let folks know we popped up that other poll too. So would you be interested in talking to CTR to find out more about their offerings? So just so folks know, would love, want to connect with them, please take the time to answer that poll question. And Adam, I'll turn it back over to you to continue the question and answers. No, you're doing great. It looks like we've got the poll going. We do have another question here for Dick. For the rescue projects that you talked about and that we participated in, right, where they had one partner and decided maybe they needed to find another partner that could align with them a little bit more closely. What did you say was kind of one of the more common points of failure? Was it lack of planning, lack of testing? How can you speak to that, or something else?
I mean, typically what we find is from, if they've gone live, we find that the probably the vast amount of people feel that the implementers didn't listen to them, that they didn't build the system according to what they wanted, that the users, that the implementer didn't train them adequately at the beginning so that they knew what they were doing when they made some of the decisions, when they signed off of a design requirement. They didn't know because um, every application has its own lingo, its own terminology, and so unless you spend the time to tell them what a business unit is and how it differs from an organizational unit in EBS becomes a business unit, and what the impact is, it's not just the name change, it's something else. So a lot of times it's that, so that the implementer didn't take the time. If they're not live yet, it might be because the planning didn't happen. It just evaporated, either because the sponsor wasn't strong enough to get the process through. It's very rarely the app. I mean, I'm speaking from a consultant point, of course, but it's very rarely the application. It just means that it wasn't applied correctly, or and like funds, they ran out of funds, or the business changed. I mean, who would have thought a year ago that we'd be a year within COVID? Everybody working remotely. So, things change, and oftentimes we come in after the fact. If we come in to rescue, we come in after the fact with the knowledge. The people they know more about what they don't know, so that the lines are open. The negative part is there's no honeymoon phase. We come in, with a big distrust of either an implementer or the application. So oftentimes we have to kind of fight that back, and we have to kind of prove to them that we can help them and that the application can help them. So yeah, I'd say invariably I hear that the implementer didn't work with them, didn't answer their questions. Maybe they were remote versus being on site. Today, certainly that's more obvious, but it's usually that.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else?
I am not seeing any other questions at this time.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna. I know that you still have the poll open. If you could close that, I'll put at least the final slide up.
Yeah, I think it's being
so. Now. This is our final slide. This is our money slide. This is. You can contact me, or you can contact Adam, or you can go onto our website. We have a contact us page, throughout the whole website. If you would like to find any more information out, Shelby and Quest will be posting this on their website. But the whether you use us or whether you use another proven implementer, it's important that you do something, and that you get one that has a methodology and can work with you to develop that methodology, so that you can finish your implementation successfully. And remember, finish is a relative term. Finish means I've gone live, I have phase 1 issues resolved, and now I'm working on phase 2. And then, by the way, when I finish phase 2, I'll probably have phase 3. I mean, Oracle especially. I mean, it's a shark that's constantly swimming forward. I mean, it's something that you have to constantly be aware of and constantly resharpen that sword to make it successful. A year, 2 years, 3 years down the road. Well, if there's not any other questions, I certainly appreciate your time. I'll give you back about 14 minutes.
Actually, yeah. It looks like we do have a couple more questions. Okay. One is, I just saw them, sorry about that. Do you typically measure success or failure as whole implementation or by its work stream?
Certainly, because we have milestones, we can measure success. Do we have a good requirements gathering process? Do we have a good configuration? Do we have a good testing, training process? Do we have a good cutover process? We can certainly measure success in those regards, but I look at it a little bit more holistically, that I'm more comfortable when I look back at an implementation and I can talk to the controller or I can talk to the general manager, and they will be a reference for me and for my product. That tells me it was successful. All the other steps are good to have, but until I know that the users are processing invoices and processing receivables and processing work orders, that to me is successful. I don't really care that step one was correct. I really care that the users are happy at the end of the process. When I say I really mean CTR. I speak in I, but I mean us. Okay.
Perfect.
You said you had another question?
Yeah, the last one that I see, how do you handle a client that wants to build a lot of extensions around Oracle ERP Cloud rather than just examining the actual functionality, right? How do you do that?
Well, I mean, that's why you have to know the customer, because if it's a competitive edge of that customer and it's really important, and all, I still would want to take a walk through the cloud. If we're talking about the cloud, I still would want to take a walk through the cloud and see if Oracle has that functionality internally. Because if it is, certainly the integration and the speed will be faster if I can keep it within the Oracle product line. But on the other side, I mean, we deal with a lot of integrations with a lot of third parties. And there's a lot of good, I mean, the ecosystem, Oracle's been around forever, and even the cloud has been here for, gosh, about, 12, 15 years. So the cloud has been with HCM and all that. They've been around. So there's a great ecosystem that supports extensions. I just would want to, that's why it's important to first find the requirements and find out what Oracle can do, and that what Oracle can't do, find out if there's another system. I mean, Oracle has a great integration software middleware. In addition to that, there's other software middleware that works great as well. So it's always a consultant's response, is it depends, but I tried really hard. That's that change management that you pointed out to me on the slide, because you shouldn't try to force EBS or PeopleSoft into Oracle's ERP Cloud unless there's a competitive edge that makes that so important to you as a customer. So that, I mean, I would still try to focus on keeping it as vanilla, because Oracle has 4 updates. Oracle's Cloud has 4 updates every year. So you have to make sure, if you have a lot of third parties and you have a lot of integration points, you have to make sure that those are okay. That takes a lot of testing and a lot of planning. Whereas if you go standard within Oracle, Oracle's updates are truly, I mean, they're an integrated solution, so they truly cover the entire spectrum. So the more I can stay vanilla, the better off I am. Some of you have experienced that. You move. It took forever to move from 11.5.10 to 12.1.3. I'm sorry, I'm an EBS guy, so I focus more on EBS. But I mean, it's important that you do that. Okay. Anything else?
No.
So it doesn't bother me, but let me know.
Oh, there's one other question here that we have in the chat about working with companies of different sizes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how do we work?
Whether or not working with large companies or small companies.
Yeah. Sure.
Sorry, Dick.
So that's okay. No. Yeah. Certainly.
Yeah. It's a smaller company asking. They've been on Oracle Cloud. They're curious about working with companies of how we've worked with companies of varying sizes.
Yeah. Again, that's I talked early on about our methodology being flexible and scalable, and those aren't just phrases. It really is a process, and oftentimes I might be training I procurement. requesting system. I might be doing multiple training sessions of that because there might be 50 or 100 or 500 people involved. And I might be at a smaller organization where it's 15 people, and they're also the people who are doing payables and doing purchasing and doing. It's more just a matter of focus. Nowadays, in this technology, we can certainly do remote learning and remote testing and all. But yeah, it's you're still rolling it down to milestones and tasks, whether it's a large organization or a small organization. It's just sometimes the amount of time that a smaller organization can spend, because they have to backfill a position or they have to do something like that. They may not have a lot of subject matter experts. So yeah, it's certainly it's sometimes a volume issue, and so it's really important when we have the requirements gathering and when we meet pre-kickoff to talk, that all that be explained and all that be processed. Certainly, you have very large organizations that do implementations, and they can field hundreds of people to assist. And you have boutiques, which we consider ourselves a boutique, and we tend to handle it in a more personal and more intimate situation. That's my roundabout answer. Anything else, Adam? Adam?
I don't see any other questions, and I'm not sure if we lost Adam there.
I think we did.
Adam's lost audio.
Yeah, that's fine. That happens during these conversations.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
I think I'm back now.
Okay.
I did lose audio there for a couple minutes. I apologize. Not sure what happened, but I think that we've pretty much covered everything that we set out to cover, and we can continue to take these conversations offline with the few people that want to have further engagement, get to know this a little bit better, and then the video will be posted in the next couple days. So this is great.
Okay.
Thank you so much for the information, Dick. This is awesome.
No problem. And again, you have our contact information. That'll be part of the slides that'll be handed out. And you're welcome to contact us or contact the company as a whole. And we'd be glad to help you if we can. Thank you very much for your time. Thanks for attending. Thanks for staying on for the hour. I know sometimes staying on these webinars is a little difficult, but thank you very much, and we'd be glad to help you anytime you can. Have a nice rest of the afternoon.
And thank you guys, CTR and everything, for all the help and participating in this. We greatly appreciate you guys providing this information. And for the folks on the phone, like they mentioned, we will be posting the recording and information to you guys in the next couple of days and follow up with an email. And for the attendees that asked to speak directly with CTR, we'll make sure that we connect you guys with them. So everybody have a great day, and thanks for joining the ERP Cloud SIG, and we hope that you continue to engage with us throughout the next couple of sessions. Have a great day.
Thank you, Christina. Thank you, Shelby.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.